Hello everyone, Jolene here from Bookworm Adventure Girl. Welcome back, and if you are new, thanks for checking out my channel. Please hit subscribe and stick around. Today I am going to highlight some queer Indigenous authors and offer some book recommendations. Some of them I have read, but there's many of them that I am hoping to read. And I want to thank Fraser from Fraser Simon's SpringboardThought for this whole idea. Fraser commented on one of my videos where I shared upcoming books on my TBR from Indigenous authors, and I shared my experience of raising a teepee. So June is Pride Month. It is also National Indigenous History Month in Canada. So I thought it was a great idea to share some recommendations with all of you of queer Indigenous authors. So you will sometimes hear people use the term Indigiqueer, and how I understand that term is kind of like another way of identifying as two-spirit, as some people don't identify with that term either. So, but with all terms, it's probably best to ask the person using the term what they prefer and what they mean by it for themselves. I will have some recommendations on this list of authors who do identify as two-spirit or Indigiqueer. So the first two authors are probably, I'm going to say that they are the most well-known, at least here in Canada, and I am going to begin with Joshua Whitehead. Joshua Whitehead is a two-spirit Ojibwa-Cree member of, I think it's Peguis First Nation in Treaty 1 in Manitoba. And in 2021, Joshua Whitehead won Canada Reads with his debut novel, Jonny, Appleseed, which had also been longlisted for the Giller Prize. And I have talked about this book many times on my channel. The main character is Jonny Appleseed, and Jonny Appleseed is a two-spirit Indigiqueer who makes a living as a cyber sex worker. When Jonny's grandfather dies, he spends that week preparing to go back to the res for the funeral, and it triggers a lot of memories and thoughts and just kind of figuring out where he came from and what his life is about. And my favorite part about this book was Jonny's relationship with his kokum, or grandmother. Joshua Whitehead has written poetry and edited an anthology, and the next book that I'd like to read by him is Full Metal Indigiqueer. And I believe this was his first publication, and it's a collection of poetry that focuses on two-spirit Indigenous lives that have been silenced or forgotten about. And then the next author is an author that I've talked about, again, many times, and that is Billy Ray Belcourt. Billy Ray Belcourt is from the Driftpile Cree Nation, and that is in Treaty 8 in northern Alberta. And I have read his memoir, A History of My Brief Body. And this book begins with stories of Billy Ray's memories of his life growing up in northern Alberta. He also has a very special relationship with his kokum. And in this memoir, he shares how colonial violence has affected him and his family and their community. And he also shares the joy that exists, despite so much difficulty. And I think what I was most impressed with in this book is the language that he uses. You can tell that he's really a poet at heart. And I also appreciated that the book offered hope and a way forward. So because I enjoyed the language in this book so much, I really want to read some of Billy Ray Belcourt's poetry. And his debut poetry collection is called This Wound is a World. And I think that this will be what I will read next by him, and I want to follow that up with his next poetry collection, which is called NDN Coping Mechanisms, Notes from the Field. I think it's a great title. This has been described as genre-bending, and in many ways it is about the limits and uses of poetry as a vehicle for Indigenous liberation. And then up next is Gregory Scofield. Gregory Scofield is a Red River Métis of Cree and European descent from Maple Ridge, British Columbia. And the book that has been on my radar for quite some time now is Scofield's memoir, Thunder Through My Veins, Memories of a Métis Childhood. And this memoir is about his difficult and traumatic childhood. He was separated from his family. He experienced poverty and abuse. So I'm hoping to get to that soon. And like the previous authors, Gregory Scofield has also written several collections of poetry, and one that really interests me is called Love, Medicine, and One Song. And that collection is about human relationships with the land, with ourselves, and with others. And I also know that he uses like Cree words in his poetry, which I think is really interesting, and I like when poets do that. Tomson Highway is another writer that has been on my radar for a while now. Tomson Highway is Cree and a member of the Barren Lands First Nation, and that is located in Brochet, which is a community in northern Manitoba near the Saskatchewan border. And Tomson Highway is a writer and a playwright and a musician. He is probably most well known for his play called The Res Sisters, which is about 7 women living on a reserve, and they are trying to win the biggest bingo in the world to get out of the situation, the lives that they are living. And he's also known for using humor alongside heavier topics, much like Thomas King. His novel Kiss of the Fur Queen is a coming-of-age story that I want to read, and it follows 2 Cree boys through residential school to adulthood. But the book that I am most interested in is Tomson Highway's memoir called Permanent Astonishment. It talks about his childhood in the north, the reason his parents sent him to residential school, and his experiences there. And it also focuses on his relationship with his brother Rene. They were the youngest of 12 siblings. 5 siblings died in childhood, and Rene, who was a dancer, died from AIDS in 1990. So I hope to read this by the end of this year. Next are a few newer to me authors. First is Ma-Nee Chacaby, who is an Ojibwa-Cree writer and activist who lives in Thunder Bay, Ontario. And I have heard of her memoir a few times now, so it is on my TBR. It's called A Two-Spirit Journey, the Autobiography of a Lesbian Ojibwa-Cree Elder. And in this memoir, she shares memories of her early life. And this memoir just has a lot of themes, like of poverty, alcoholism, and abuse. But I think more importantly, it is about survival and overcoming the social and economic and health issues created by colonialism. Next is Sharron Proulx-Turner. This is next on my list, and Sharron was a Two-Spirit Métis writer from Ontario who died in 2016, and I am interested in her book, She Walks for Days Inside 1,000 Eyes. This book combines poetry and history to look at the lives of two-spirited women, and she is also the editor of the last book that I want to talk about, which is Beverly Little Thunder's memoir, and it's called One Bead at a Time. So this is an oral memoir of Beverly Little Thunder, who is a Two-Spirit Lakota elder from Standing Rock. She has lived in Canada and the US, serving Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities, especially women, promoting political and spiritual awareness. And she is all about building community, and she established the only all-women's Sundance in the world. So it sounds like she has, quite a story. So these are some books by queer Indigenous authors. Some of them I've read, and others, I'm aware of, and I do want to finally get to reading them. So please let me know if you have read any of these, or if you have some recommendations that you would like to add to the list. Please do that. Put your recommendations in the comments below so others can check those out as well. My list are all Indigenous peoples living or who have lived in Canada, but they certainly don't have to be. If you know of other authors that you think would be great on the list and that they're worth checking out, then yes, please share them. I look forward to chatting with you in the comments. Thanks again for watching. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and don't forget to make every day an adventure.